Live from Waterford and Dungarvan, this is Waterford at 1 News.
Good afternoon, I'm Liz Reddy. Today's top stories. 4 men are still in custody following arrests by Gardaí investigating the activities of an organised crime gang in the southeast. There's no change in the number of patients with coronavirus at University Hospital Waterford. A Waterford senator says the second cath lab at UHW will go to tender in July. And in sport, fixtures have been announced for race meetings at Tramore next month. 4 men are still in custody after Gardaí investigating the activities of an organised crime gang in the southeast seized a Glock pistol, cash and suspected cocaine. Officers from Waterford and Kilkenny, backed up by armed members of the Regional Support Unit, stopped and searched a car in Glenmore at around 4 p.m. on Wednesday and recovered the gun and over 40 rounds of ammunition. 3 men in the car, all from Waterford City and aged in their 20s and 30s, were arrested and are being held at Waterford and Thomastown Garda stations. Their periods of detention were extended yesterday. Follow-up searches were carried out at a house in Hillview in Waterford City where €33,000 in cash was seized, and at a house near New Ross where officers confiscated a quantity of cocaine with a street value of €35,000. A 4th suspect was arrested at the New Ross house. There's no change in the number of patients with coronavirus at University Hospital Waterford. There was 1 confirmed case on site last night. A further 8 suspected cases were awaiting the results of testing at the time. There's no increase in the number of cases of COVID-19 in Waterford. There's 148 since the outbreak began. Meanwhile, Cabinet Ministers will meet this afternoon to decide the latest public health advice about coronavirus. Ministers will meet will further consider proposals to make anyone who enters the country self-isolate for 2 weeks. Our political correspondent Sean Defoe reports.
Last week, the Taoiseach of Varadkar said the government plans to make it mandatory for anyone arriving in Ireland to self-isolate for 14 days. It would also be mandatory for people to fill in a locator form to say where they'll do this, which up to now has been optional. However, the system is yet to come into place and Cabinet Ministers will consider it again today. The National Public Health Emergency Team made the recommendation last Thursday. It's been meeting again this morning to consider the latest medical advice, which will be presented to the government this afternoon. Ministers are also expected to discuss the plans for the predictive grading of the Leaving Cert. The meeting comes at the end of the first week of phase 1 of the easing of lockdown restrictions, with the first real evidence coming in as to what the impact has been on the economy. Government is not due to make a decision on moving to phase 2 of the plan until June 5th.
A Waterford senator says the second cath lab at UHW will go to tender in July. Fine Gael's John Cummins says he's received confirmation from the Department of Health. All cardiac procedures are now taking place at UPMC Whitfield, while the existing lab is being refurbished. The mobile cath lab has also been removed. Senator Cummins says now is the time to restart projects like this.
While the focus of the estates unit within the HSE has rightly been on the delivery of additional infrastructure and equipment to combat the spread of COVID-19, I believe now is the time to recommence work on critical non-COVID capital projects like the second cath lab at UHW, and I'm reassured from the responses that I've received that work is well underway in this regard to prepare contract documentation and contractor selection with a view to the tender issuing before late July, and that's obviously very positive news for the people of the South East who have fought long and hard on this issue.
He says work is well underway on the refurbishment of the existing lab.
I've been informed that building works have already been completed and that the equipment supplier will be on site in mid-June to install and commission the equipment, and that it's estimated to be completed by the end of July. And while I understand that there may be some issues with the delivery of parts arising out of supply chain issues with COVID-19, I'm still very hopeful that the timeline for the installation and commissioning of that equipment can be expedited.
Small and medium enterprises in Waterford City and County will be able to apply for the Business Restart Scheme grant this afternoon. Grants of between €2,000 and €10,000 can be applied for. Sinn Féin Councillor Conor McGuinness says it will help them reopen their businesses in the weeks and months ahead.
Grant amounts are based on a business's commercial rates bill for 2019, and the grant can be used to defray ongoing fixed costs, to replenish stock, or for measures needed to ensure employee and customer safety. And to be eligible for a grant, a business must have closed over recent months or suffered a loss in turnover of 25% or more.
More information on the scheme can be found on the Waterford City and County Council's website. Meanwhile, the majority of businesses in Waterford believe they can recover when they are allowed to reopen. Fianna Fáil councillor Eddie Mulligan says they're all very worried, anxious and under a lot of stress, but their main priority is the health and safety of staff and customers.
Part and parcel of that recovery will be the support that we need from the Waterford people, from the small businesses right through to the big businesses. And I suppose anxiety, worry and stress, and I've been feeding a lot of our representations up the line insofar as yesterday I had representations from tattoo operators who feel they're being severely penalised with their comeback day.
The director of a Waterford recruitment firm says there are major questions on whether working from home is the way forward for a lot of companies. Fergal Hartley of Hartley People told Damien Tiernan on Data Today that he had no doubt that post-COVID the world of work will change.
Over 80% of people said that they want to continue in some shape or form at home working after the COVID-19 crisis passed. Pre-COVID, less than 1 in 7 people had worked from home on a regular basis. So the world of work will change. But interesting, small little things came out of that research. For example, more than 1 in 2 people state that their home desk is their kitchen table. The research does suggest as well that people have problems with focus and with distractions from home.
A Waterford silage contractor says it's business as usual this year. The silage season has begun in Waterford and is expected to ramp up over the coming weeks. Paddy Joe Mulhern from Scrahan in Kilmacthomas spoke to WLR's Kieran O'Connor on Farm View. He says farmers and contractors are working together when it comes to COVID-19.
We contact the farmers by phone there, and they don't come in contact with us. If they think their gates or anything to be open, they'd have them opened, and we just go in, each one of them have their own tractor and their own loading shovel there, and we try and keep them not mixing up with tractors, and we keep a bit just disinfecting then at the diesel tank there, just spray on a bit. And, they just keep, and no one allowed in the tractor, no passengers allowed in the tractor. So it isn't a big downfall, but we still have to be careful.
WLR Sport, Ireland's local station of the year.
Racing will return to Tramore next month. Horse Racing Ireland has revealed its fixture list for July, with an afternoon national hunt meeting set for Tramore on the 18th and an evening meeting on the 25th. Both race meetings will be held behind closed doors. This year's Galway Festival will take place during its originally scheduled dates. Meanwhile, the Tattersalls Gold Cup has been confirmed for the Curragh on July 26th, and the number of race days at Killarney in July have been reduced from 5 to 3. The Six Nations has confirmed it's working with its Southern Hemisphere counterparts towards aligning the global rugby calendar. In a joint statement, the Six Nations and SANZAR say they've held early discussions during the COVID-19 pandemic about the need to bring greater clarity to both the club and international seasons. It's believed that the Six Nations Championship could be moved back by a month to run concurrently with the Rugby Championships. In soccer, Brighton Chief Executive Paul Barber says all of their players support the decision to return to training in small groups. However, he plans further talks with the squad as Project Restart continues. Barber says it's important that players agree that it's safe to move on to the next phase.
The players are the most important people in this process now, and we've got to make sure that their fears are allayed wherever possible, that we make them feel as comfortable as possible, as quickly as possible.
Australia's Olympic chief says the Tokyo Games will look very different to what we're used to. The 2020 Games were postponed by 12 months due to the COVID-19 pandemic. John Coates, who's also head of the International Olympic Committee's inspectorate for the Tokyo Games, says they must accept that there may not be a vaccine available by next summer, which will cause major problems for a possible Olympic Games. WLR asking you to stay at home. Our next news is at 2.